Indian Brotherhood and watching all of our chiefs and people and our people working. And I remember that because they wanted a different life for us. And I see many of you here today, and I uplift you for that, for your guidance, for your love, watching you in these rooms. My first, when I started to work, my first job was with this Cree leader named Chief Francis Flett. And Francis was a interesting chief. I learned so much from him. I remember being a young staffer, 18 years old, and he said, "You're gonna come with me to a meeting at Indian Affairs." And I said, "Okay." And he said, I want $75,000 for a fishing meeting amongst our fishermen, because nobody ever listens to our fishermen and they need help. And I said, "Okay, all right." So I thought, well, I guess he'll just go get it. I thought maybe they would be nice and just help him right there. And we go into Indian Affairs, and he says, "Sit at the door." And he had these bureaucrats there, and he said, "Well, I want this." And those Indian Affairs agents said, "No, we don't have anything for you." And he said, "Well, I guess you're sitting here all night. Cindy, lock that door, sit there, because these people aren't leaving until I get what I want for our fishermen." And he got it. We had a check that day. But that's just, I learned from that to never give up. And everywhere that he went, that and then he was about to leave us and leave me on this earth, and he had wanted me to run for regional chief back then, but I was too young. I knew that I was too young. I had to learn from all of you. I had to listen to all of you first and foremost before I stand here, and I had to watch my dad. And I remember he said, "No, you run." And I said, "Oh, boss," I said, "I'm too young." And he said, I said, "How?" He said, "Well, I'll get you the north, and your dad will get you the south, and we'll help you." And I said, "No, I don't think so." I said, "I'm a little bit young." I said, "But I'm curious, boss." I said, "What would I say to those chiefs anyways?" And he says, "You tell them you're the best man for the job." Thank you. I know that I've been, the past little bit of my background, I did work for Perry Bellegarde for 6 years. I traveled with him from coast to coast to coast. I want to thank, many people that had offered me jobs in the past, but I always thought I have to come and work for our people. There's too much work in these halls. There's too many of us here together right now because there's so much work to do, and we have to work together. And so I figured, well, I have to come and work for our own people. And I was happy to do that and work for him. I was also happy to work for former National Chief Sean Atleo. He had a tough government. He had to work through a blue government where doors were shut on all of us. People remember that decade. That was a hard decade. But with that, we came together and pushed back. And we may have to do that from time to time yet again. And I'll be there with you to stand in the front lines with you. For the past 3 years, and I've been regional chief for Manitoba, and I want to thank my chiefs for allowing me to stand before you today, and they've been united in that. And I want to also thank each and every one of you, people like Phil Fontaine and others who fought many, many years ago to bring the child welfare settlement, that our kids were being discriminated against, and that those people stood up. And leadership after leadership, all of you were there doing that work, each and every one of you. I just did the easy part, and all I did was, I was your lead negotiator, and we went to negotiating rooms, and I kept trying and kept trying, and we kept trying. But after months, I was just tired of it. I had to, I went to our elders one morning, and I said, "I need some help. I can't do this alone. I need your help." And I woke up the following morning and I thought, you know what? I'm calling the Prime Minister's office. No more. I'm not going to sit back and be trampled on and kicked around and played with to not get a proper deal and to not get enough compensation to bring it back to you, to Chiefs in Assembly. And that night we secured a $40 billion deal that night. Yeah, and it was, yeah. And it was a historic amount, but it's a historic issue. It's a terrible problem that we have to fix. We have kids that are waiting for us to fix that. We have kids who are wondering how they're going to come home. So we still have work to do. Yes, I lift up many of our elders who I see here. Thank you for coming a few weeks ago to come to court And then the next day that they solidified that 23 billion, I thank you and I lift my hands up to our elders for joining us that day. Miigwech, miigwech, miigwech for our kids. Now, what am I going to do as National Chief? Well, one of the first things that we have to do is we need a new deal on policing and justice, and policing that includes long-term, sustainable, predictable funding. Why? Because we have to help police ourselves and create safe communities for ourselves. If we don't, then other entities come in and we see the terrible statistics that happen to our people when other people are policing us. When we do it ourselves, and I commend the Ontario police forces, you haven't killed your people. You've never hurt people. And I think that that's what Canada needs to learn from that we have a different way. And so that's on policing. I also want to work on housing in this country, because First Nations are waiting. I know I only have a few minutes left. First Nations are waiting, and we can't commit to housing without the infrastructure underneath. We need roads. We need all these practical things. And I want to do that for you. I want to work for you. The next day, tomorrow morning after I'm elected, that's my first order of business, is to get down there and make sure that we start lobbying. Why? Because March is coming really soon. There's a new budget coming. There's a new budget coming next March. And we can't be left out of off those tables anymore. They committed to closing some of those gaps to 2030. We need to hold them to account for that. I'd also like to work on economic development. I was, dealing with wealthy people in this country, and all of them have made their money off of our lands, each and every one of them. Every one of them have made their wealth. And I know that we have to have dialogues in these assemblies, such as free, prior, and informed consent. We have to have those hard discussions. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for them, to help them understand? Because every day they're calling our offices, asking how to contact you. Half the time I say, call the band office, pick up the phone. And it's practical things like that, right? And they don't, they struggle with that. So I think that we have to have a big discussion with industry in this country and guide them on the way on how to work with us, and remind them that there's people here that have inherent rights in these lands. And so we have to work on that. Every single year, of course, we have to work on the federal budget advocacy, each and every one of us together, put all of our stuff and lobby that day in, day out to every single minister. It doesn't matter what government's in, that we lobby them, and we lobby hard. In conclusion, I know that there's so much more that I want to talk about. There's so much work to do. All I can tell you is that my track record has always been to try and work for our people, to make sure that our chiefs have open doors. And I want to thank the chiefs from across this country that have called. And, most of the time they're like, well, would you run for national chief? Well, then I need some help. Can you help me on this? All summer long, right? And it's been like that for about a year now. And I'll never turn our people away. I don't care which province you're from, chief. I've never turned you away, and you know that. And I'll continue to do that. But I need support, and we need support. We need to make sure that the AFN is open, that it's working for you, that it's opening doors for you when you come to Ottawa, that you're not here alone, and that, all these big lobby organizations are not, that you're not having to pay them to get through to see somebody, that we're there to help you. That's our job as National Chief. That's our job as a national organization, to work for First Nations and to get results for our people. And that's the National Chief that I want to be. Yeah. Thank you. So with that, miigwech. I want to just say we have the momentum. You don't have to wait for me to learn on what to do. I'll know what to do tomorrow morning, and I just ask for your support. I ask for your continued prayers, and most importantly for the 3.5 years ahead, that you stand with me, that you walk with me, that you tell me what you need. And I don't care how small it is in your First Nation community, that I'll be there for you, and we'll be there to work together. We have lots of people here that are willing to work for you, and we need to get back to that once again. So miigwech. Hi.
Thanks very much, Candidate Woodhouse. Our next candidate is Candidate North.
Danse, kira tamiskat no gakina wanos saminagisirak. Niminentene bertiane be nipoyanista. Midune ne niminenten. Uta aberutiach. Gates mitagugakino gates hig. Tapaskanagiano Master National Chief Assembly of First Nation. Ayagnagodaya Sintotage Egagates mitan. Yes. All right, thank you. Like I said, I want to make a few minutes of time with some special people in my life before I tell you some of the reasons why I want to become your next national chief, and also tell you some of the specific things that I've heard and the things that I would like to focus on for the next 3.5 years. I want to welcome my good friend and the first MKO Grand Chief, which was in our Northern Manitoba Territory, George Muswagon, and I'm also a fellow former Grand Chief of MKO as well. So I'm honored to have Mr. George Muswagon.
I just want to introduce myself. My name is George Muswagon. I just want to start by saying, some time ago, a certain Prime Minister once said, if you no longer speak your language, you will no longer have a right to command what is supposed to be yours in this country. It's got a similar name to the present Prime Minister. So with that, I will say this. Kinatamiskat na kageno utagaya eganuts. Agawa sko utagani pait kawi kagwet simitagog tawit saka paistawa ek. Ninnan itega ututiak pimitsigamak. Ninan istam kagigitsugamagani yan. MKO gait sagatek, stumitana was kias pinanima, kagis panik. Hawa, skota gani pait, kiatetapis kam, anemenu, asagini ganu teo, misatsi, ukimagana, eguteo teki wet nuk. Magagiwi misko samit na wow. Kaisi, minigwagi semantu, may mustigewin, kimisko sa megainanaw, ispigan to naman, in nisiwin. So in English, I will say this very briefly. Some odd years ago, I was the first Grand Chief of the organization known as Manitoba Kiwit Namiugamaganak. The young fella that I was then, later on, preceded by Ms. Sheila North, who was our first woman Grand Chief in Northern Manitoba. And in the interest of time, I will leave you with this. In our traditional practice and in our ceremony, we are often reminded and told, if you are to seek wisdom, you look to the north. I ask you to look to the north to guide you and be your next national chief. Thank you very much.
George. I also want to invite my friend Angie Bailey, Chief Angie Bailey from the British Columbia, from our territory in the mountains.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory that we're on, and I'm humbled and honored to be here in this beautiful land. And I would like to acknowledge 2 of my BC elders that are still present with us long day and night. I've known Sheila since 2017, 2018, when I first heard her speak at an event, and I was just so blown away with her amazing presence and her words. And I guess I should acknowledge that Hereditary Chief Angie Bailey from Atchlet's First Nation that's located in Chilliwack, BC, and I'm one of the nominators, and I'm hoping that you vote and support Sheila North as the next national chief. With that, I'll keep it short and sweet. Lahai. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ekuse. And I also want to acknowledge other people that have joined me on the stage. My good friend and the tall chief, Greg Nodjawin, from Neoshingaming here in Ontario. Ekuse. He's such a great motivator. And my also other good friend, Christian Sinclair, who's former chief, and he's my former boss from the NAG Games. I always forget the acronym, but Games in 2000, he was my former boss. And also my nephew Joel, who's representing the males in our family, Kakino, Asatsinababa, and my beautiful mother, Sadie Northawa. Sadie North Weenus, she's right here. They just arrived from Winnipeg this afternoon, just minutes ago, so I'm glad to see them. They're here, and I also want to acknowledge my grandbaby over there somewhere, Adonis, who is here with us and with me and my daughter, Patricia, and my son, Kelly. My sisters came as well, Audrey and Kathleen, and my niece, my niece Carly and Adeline. Obviously, I'm thinking about all my nieces and my nephews. I thank you for making time. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for caring about our organization. Thank you for caring about our people. I want to acknowledge everyone online as well. This is a new time and age, and how cool are we that we can use both and the airwaves to magnify our voices. It's very, very good to see, and I'm very humbled and thankful that I'm here with you in this moment in time. I was given a good lesson and a good story by one of our chiefs from Alberta who says, this is a moment in time. 150 years ago, we were meant to be extinct, gone. Our languages, gone. But here we are. We're here at every facet of society. In 150 years, where will we be? It's a sweet thought. I also want to acknowledge the Algonquin people of these beautiful lands. I want to thank you for allowing us to be here. I want to tell you that I am, first of all, Ininu. I'm a kukum. I'm a mother. And I come from a very strong line of Cree people, both sides of my family. George Muswagon is from my dad's home community, and my mom, Sadie, is from Bunbonabee Cree Nation, where I come from in northern Manitoba. It's an isolated community in northern Manitoba where I grew up. I was actually born right in Bunbonabee Cree Nation, along with my sister who was born before me there. But I was born in my community, and I lived in my community up until I was 15 years old. I also want to explain to you quickly my jacket. This is my late father's jacket. He passed away 6 years ago now, and he commissioned this jacket specifically with these flowers and with this fringe and with a moose in the back. He didn't really like the moose, but it ended up there anyway. He said the moose could be better. I'll show you. But he commissioned it because he wanted a special jacket for my sister Rachel's wedding. He thought so highly of us that he always wanted to look his best and do his best. And I want to acknowledge the memory of my father because he had the authority as a leader. He was a leader of our community, and he didn't even come from our community. He came to Bunbonabee and he became a chief of our nation and married my mom. And I want to tell you, and I'm proud to say, the very first act that he did as a chief on day one, hour one, is he went and gathered his council that he was elected with, and he went to the home of the Indian agent, and he said, Indian agent, come with us. You're getting on the plane, and you're not welcome here anymore. My father was an Indian agent kicker-outer. And I am too. I want to kick out the Indian agent. I know it's still there. That office is still there. They don't have the right to tell us who we are, to tell us what we should do with our families, what we should do with our lands. We are the supreme sovereign nations and the sovereign people of our lands and our people. I also want to make special mention of these because everywhere I've been in the last few weeks, I've been asked about my feather, about my jacket and my flowers and my medallion especially. I have the same flowers in this medallion, which is my family crest. My family crest is the North Star in between, and then Turtle Island representing our lands, but also my mother. And then these flowers that my dad commissioned for himself. And this feather is from the same bird that when Elijah Harper stood in 1990 in the Manitoba legislature, and it was up to him, only him, to stand and oppose Meech Lake Accord. He sat there with a feather. And this is a feather from the same bird. And I'm honored to be a keeper of it. I don't feel like I own it, but I'm keeping it, thanks to my good friends Darcy and Jennifer Wood, who were gifted this feather from Elijah himself to this family. And they've given it to me to be a safe keeper for it. But I also believe they've given me and our people the mandate to be the best I can be, to be the best leader I can be. We all know that I was in the election in 2018 for National Chief. And as my good friend Reginald Belrose says, he came in second last time. But I was also second 2018, so I came second first. And I want to acknowledge, I've learned a lot since then. I've run in a few other elections, and I accepted defeat, but I don't give up. I'm here. Not because I like losing, not because I like running, because I'm being asked by credible and incredible people, knowledge keepers who know our treaties inside and out, who know our people, incredible leaders who have the unction and the power to give authority. And they ask me, and I don't say no to that. I will tell you, there are common themes across our country, and I don't need to explain each and every one of them because you know them more than I do, from coast to coast to coast, and even our perceived southern border with our J Treaty. All of these surrounding areas, we know the issues. From BC, we know all the way to the East Coast. And I've learned a lot of lessons from those talks and conversations I've had over the last few weeks. And these are, to me, Bannock and T issues. We need to get back to a place where we understand, get back to a place where we know what we're dealing with. That is one thing that I would want to do, is to make sure an organization in the next few 100 days will understand where we're at. So we can start putting our treaty-based solutions, our rights-based solutions, our inherent title rights solutions to these problems. Chief Byron Louis, I hope he doesn't mind me giving this lesson that he gave me. He said to me, and it's a good reminder I think about every other day. He says, when you look at your plate of food every time you sit down for supper or breakfast, if you're looking at your plate and if it's not your traditional food, then your treaty rights, your inherent rights are being trampled. And it's such a good lesson that I just sticks in my mind, because our rights are not being respected in our own lands. The solutions are within our treaties and our inherent and title rights. We know that some of our nations don't have treaties the way that the Treaty 1 to 11s have treaties, but they still have the rights and titles to their lands. They are also sovereign nations, and I acknowledge each and every one of them across our territories. I think that we are very fortunate to have over 70 languages across our country. Very humbled also to hear of the solutions again. But one of the things that I want to look at, and what I hope and to do as your next National Chief, is to bring that sense of unity back, to bring that sense of dignity back. Enough of this fighting, enough of this bickering. We have to be integral. Our children, our youth, the world is watching how we behave and how we act and how we treat each other. We have an extreme responsibility to be the utmost upstanding leaders that you are. And we have to display that. And we know that the government has had a hand in how we've treated each other, not just now in the past few years, but many generations. They have been involved in directly confusing us, dividing us from nation to nation to nation. And now they're trying it again with Bill C-53, because you know why? They see that we're catching up to what the tricks and and the plays that they have in their playbook. They know that we have authority where our people are winning cases after cases in the Supreme Court because of the authority that we have. And now they're trying to change the game a bit to confuse us even more. What I would like to propose is this, and this is a conversation I've had with a few people who asked me what I was hoping to see. Again, I would like to bring unity back to our organization so that we can work together, that we can support each other from nation to the border, to all the way up north. Regional Chief Gerald Antoine reminds me every day almost that we are a family. We have to start acting like a family. We have to start working like a family. And what I propose is as sovereign nations, under the guidance of our supreme sovereign, our creator, that we make treaties with ourselves. Treaties from coast to coast to coast to the perceived border. That we sit down with a process and sign a treaty together with each other so we can tell the government that we are united on these fronts, that they can't come back to us and negotiate with us. There should be no co-legislation. We should call for a moratorium on legislations that don't work for us, that don't apply to us, that are not designed by us. I know that this Liberal government has tried its best to be kind, but we shouldn't be waiting on people's kindness at that level. They should be kind anyways, but we should be forcing, the work that they're trying to do, that they're trying to force us to like and us to work with, these 10-year agreements all along down the line. We know that there are ways and tactics that these governments have been trying all these years. And we're seeing all of these provinces, Alberta, and now we're hearing maybe in Quebec and other provinces, they're trying to exercise their sovereignty. But you know what? We as Indigenous people, as First Nations people, as Cree people, we have the authority to claim sovereignty because we are sovereign nations. And only we can claim that sovereignty. We have to stand here together as nations, families, together to stand up for each other, make treaties with each other. Can you imagine if we came back a year later and said treaties across our nations from nation to nation and that we are unpenetrable? I don't like that word because I can't say it very fluently, but something that the government can't come at us and divide us with. It's for us so we can have these AFN meetings better, so we can have our work ahead of time and be done ahead of time, so when governments try to come and have their input, we'll already have a stance that we stand up for each other on language rights, education, our access to education and better health care. At every level, we do have the power to create our own police forces, our own healthcare systems, our own education systems, our own protection of our languages, and we have to do it for our children. Our children need hope. My first nominator, Michael Yellowback, had to head home as soon as he checked in a hotel today because he lost a young girl, his niece, to an untimely death. So the time is now. The moment is now. It's critical. We have Canada chasing us in a few months because they're going to start being in the position we're in an election. So we have the opportunity to come together, sign treaties with each other, and tell the government that we are united across our beautiful nations. The time is now. Let's take AFN back and make it for you, chiefs, for you, communities, for our grassroots people. Let's make AFN relevant again, and respectful, and protective. I love you. To vote for me, Sheila North, for National Chief. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Candidate North. So our next speaker is Candidate Pratt, and I understand we need to be ready to open the Zoom for an intro.
Thank you Can you hear me okay? Am I on? Is this live? Well, thank you very much. I want to get started, and first of all, this is a long way from Skunk Hollow, that's for sure. And few people got it in the room. I want to, first of all, Kamska Tinawa, Nawago, Gamantik, David Pratt, Nasigusan, Muscapeding, Ochinia. I want to acknowledge the Algonquin territory that we're on here and the people that have hosted us on their lands for the next couple of days. And I want to acknowledge the pipes that were lifted and the elders that prayed for us to start things off in a good way this morning. And I want to give a couple minutes time to my nominator, Chief Marine Lugie, to say a few words on my candidacy.
Misai, Hadi Denise, Sakaize, Isaac. Good afternoon, elders, chiefs, youth delegates, our respected Indigenous veterans, our hereditary chiefs, our traditional leaders. My name is Maureen Lugie. I am the elected chief of Wet'suwet'en First Nation in Burns Lake, Northern British Columbia. I am speaking to you from the unceded traditional territory of the Wet'suwet'en people. I want to acknowledge the unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory, of which the AFN Special Assembly is taking place this week, and I thank the people and extend my appreciation to you for being the host nation. I also acknowledge each of the national chief candidates and thank all of you for allowing your name to stand for this very important position on Turtle Island. And I wish all of you every success in this election and encourage you to bring our people together. I am honored and humbled to introduce my friend David Pratt. David Pratt is of the Muscapetang First Nation in Treaty 4, Saskatchewan. He comes from a large family of 15 brothers and sisters, and he is the youngest in his family. David is currently the Vice Chief of the Federation of the Sovereign Indigenous Nations in Saskatchewan for the last 6 years. He is an educator by trade. David is a very kind individual, outspoken and respectful leader. David can do the job for the next, David can do the job to be our next national chief for all of the nations of our country. He has the experience to bring our chiefs together to make decisions towards advancing our inherent and treaty rights. As one of our Indigenous leaders, he can reset AFN's relationship with the federal government, and he has a reputation for working with all of the parties while advocating for us as Indigenous nations. David understands that our people face discrimination every day, and he was able to successfully have a healthy ombudsman put in place to monitor how our First Nations people were being treated. He has experience in key legislation such as First Nations policing, health, water rights, which align with our priorities, and we need a national chief who can further our progress on these issues. He has a 90-day strategy which clearly outlines his plan to present a united message to the government and to Canadians, which is essential for our collective success. David is a leader who can get the work done, and he can lead the implementation of change that we all seek. Messiah, for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, it's up.
Thank you, Chief, for that nomination. I want to thank all of the chiefs that signed my nomination paper, Chief Don Miracle too as well, who seconded, all the leadership that are standing behind me, as well as my friends and my family. I first of all want to say it's an honor and a privilege to be a candidate for your national chief. I want to thank each of every one of my colleagues that have put their names forward for this position. It's not an easy decision you have to make to run for the AFN. When you have 633 First Nations across this country, from one end of the country to the other and coast to coast, from the Atlantic to the Pacific Oceans, it can be challenging. But I want to always remind our people of the strengths and the diversity and the strength of our diversity that's brought us this far. I know that we've had some problems these last few years at the AFN. For us not to recognize and acknowledge that would be ignoring the 1,000-pound elephant in the room. We have had some issues amongst ourselves, even as executive members, as well as leadership and with our staff. But I want to tell you that the problems and the issues that we faced at the AFN, the positive things that the AFN has accomplished far outweigh those things. And I want to tell you that as we move forward together, in terms of tomorrow and electing our next national chief, I want to tell you that the roles and responsibility that they have will not be an easy fix. But I'm confident because of the solutions we've done in the past. I want to remind the Assembly of our great history that we have here at this organization. In 1968, when the then Trudeau government under Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Jean Chrétien was the Minister of Indian Affairs, tried to take our rights away in the white paper. They didn't like that term, Citizens Plus. They didn't like that term, recognizing inherent and treaty rights, and they did everything they could to finally get rid of the so-called Indian problem. It's something that we've been dealing with for a long time. Our leaders back then stood up collectively across this great country. Leaders such as Harold Cardinal, leaders such as George Manuel, leaders such as Walter Dieter and late David Ahenecue stood up together with their voices and said, we need a strong national organization that's going to fight for our rights across this country from one end to the other. Canada can no longer do things unilaterally. So they organized and they established the National Indian Brotherhood, and Walter Dieter was its first president. And we didn't have BOC funding back then. We couldn't submit a proposal to INAC and say we need some funding to pay for the staff and the salaries. Walter Dieter mortgaged his home to meet the salary needs of the organization the first year it was founded. And because of the work that was done back then, and as the National Indian Brotherhood was reorganized and morphed into the Assembly of First Nations, we once again came together in the early 80s, when once again the Trudeau government thought to perpetuate the Constitution without recognition of our rights within that document. Again, great leaders like Billy Diamond, great leaders like George Erasmus, great leaders like Bill Wilson, all came together collectively across this country and stood shoulder to shoulder to say, we're not going to allow the Canadian Constitution to be repatriated without recognition of our rights within Section 35. All of that happened because we came together collectively. And Canada's enjoyed the last 2.5 years. Canada's taken advantage of that. We saw it this year in the recent budget announcement when only $2 billion was set aside for investment for First Nations. for a health equity fund. What is $2 billion over 5 years against 633 First Nations? It was a slap in the face when every one of our chiefs in our areas are facing a crystal meth and opioid crisis. And as national chief, we're going to fix that problem and let the government know enough is enough. We're tired of burying our kids too young. How many of our children are growing up fatherless and parentless and motherless now because of the opioid crisis? And Canada knows the stats, but is doing nothing, chiefs. That's why this election is important tomorrow. The important tomorrow is who we're going to elect to speak on behalf of all our nations and raise those issues. Now, we've had some issues currently, but I'm confident that we can deal with them. I want to acknowledge the great work that we accomplished on child welfare. One of those issues, the compensation package that was announced and it was done this year, the $43.2 billion package was a collective work. I want to acknowledge the past leadership, Phil Fontaine, and regionally, Guy Lonechild was our regional chief at that time. There were leaders, Jordan's family. Mike Muskego was on council that time in Norway House when Jordan's family was being fought and kicked around like a political football. We've got to have enough of this jurisdictional football for our rights and for our issues from provinces to territories and the feds kicking it back and forth. We got to stand together and send messages to governments across this country. Enough is enough. First Nations are here to fight collectively for our rights and for our people and for our children's future. So those are one of the things that we have to face. And I want to acknowledge the child welfare work that was started in Cindy Blackstock and Mary Teegee and Raymond Shingus and Richard Gray and Vera Sazy and many others that started that work. And I'm very proud that the work started in Saskatchewan in 1997 and ended with the National Policy Review on Child Welfare in 2005, which was then presented to the then Harper government, which did nothing with that report. It sat on a shelf and was collecting dust. But our chiefs and our technicians got together and they filed the cases at the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal as well as the federal court, and we won. We proved that Canada is discriminating against our kids and continues to underfund and kill them. So we came together and we saw what we can do, chiefs, with a record multi-billion-dollar claim. But we can do that across every sector. We can do that in natural resources. And I want to assure the chiefs, I've heard your stories. I've heard about the struggles with the fishery and the species going extinct within the BC interior. I've heard about the challenges that you faced in the Maritimes and hearing about how your nations are attempting to exert their sovereignty and their jurisdiction over the fishery, and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans still allows harassment of the fishers in the Atlantic. That policy must end, and as National Chief, we'll make sure that it stops. Talk about all the other areas, the inland fishery and the lack of jurisdictional recognition. That the provinces and territories have continued to fail us within these colonial structures and systems. We have to create our own systems, whether it's in child welfare, whether it's in education, whether it's in justice, whatever area we have to we have to start exerting our sovereignty. And that's where the AFN plays an essential role. The AFN needs to lobby and advocate for funding of the frameworks. The AFN needs to advocate to make sure that investments are made, such as in housing. One of the biggest issues and challenges that every one of you chiefs have shared with us along this journey is the need for housing. It's a big issue right now. We're living in moldy homes. I've been in some of the northern communities where there's 18, 20 people sleeping in one home in a country as rich and wealthy as Canada. Why are we amongst the poorest? That has to stop. Canada comes in, the Natural Resources Company and the Ring of Fire. And I want to acknowledge Chief Donnie and Chief Chris Munoz, as well as Chief Turtle, who've taken a stand against resource development that's trying to happen in their backyard. I'll never forget meeting Elder Sam and Chief Donnie and hearing their story when they were arrested for simply protecting their land and their lake in their backyard in Bearskin. And when they were arrested and taken to Thunder Bay and put in jail, all the people were let go, but they came to Chief Donnie and Elder Sam and they said, we'll drop the charges of mischief against you. We'll let you go free tomorrow morning, but you got to agree to stop blocking the company from going forward and doing the survey. You know what Elder Sam said? Elder Sam said, I will die before I do that, he said. I will continue, and if it costs me my life to lay it down to protect my grandchildren and to protect our water and our land and resources. That's the determination. That's what makes us strong. That's the strength of our elders and the resiliency that we have as people in this country. The Canadian state has done nothing but oppress and kill and steal and destroy our lands and resources. Those stone buildings that are standing down there in Parliament Hill and the West and East Block, those were built on the blood and bones of our people and our sufferings. So as a national organization, we have to rebuild that consensus. We got to bring back the Assembly, give the chiefs a greater voice, recognize the work of the Secretariat, reassure our staff, implement the policies in Resolution 13 on harassment, work on the working plan when it comes to making changes that are going to see the betterment of our lives for all of our people across the board in every sector. So we know what those issues are. We've won great victories in the past, chiefs. This Assembly has done great things. I wouldn't be putting my name forward if I didn't believe in the AFN. I wouldn't be putting my name forward if I didn't believe in this institution and this organization and in our history. I believe in that. And I wouldn't be putting my name forward if I didn't believe in our future. I know we've had some challenges, but it encourages me when I see our young people getting their medical degrees. It encourages me when I see our young people getting their law degrees and their education degrees and their social work degrees and their science degrees and their engineering degrees, because it shows me that in spite of everything Canada did, in spite of the residential school system and what the colonizers aims to accomplish, which was to kill the Indian and the child, look at this packed room tonight. We're all here, we're still alive, and it's evidence we're not going anywhere. So we know there's some issues, but I want to tell you that we can move things forward together. I think of all the stories that I heard across this country this summer and this fall. I think about all the issues that were raised and flagged with me. And I don't take none of that lightly. I know what it's like to grow up on the reserve, and these young people don't know what it's like. They're all used to tablets and having their phones and ordering up, skip the dishes and having McDonald's to the front door. There's a few people in this room that knows what it's like to have to haul your water from the slough and use the outhouse. How many people know what I'm talking about? Had to chop wood to make a fire. Laundry day was a work for the entire family. We all remember that stuff, and some of our people are still dealing with that today. Chief Munias, 20-year boil water advisory. What's the holdup? They can send $40 billion to the Ukraine to kill people and to kill Russians, but they can't spend $40 billion to fix the drinking water in their own backyard. Something's wrong. Canada needs to be called out on that when they mess up. Canada needs to be called out when they're making mistakes. But they also need to be acknowledged too when they're doing what's right. But most of the time when they do what's right, it's only because at the threat of court action or we beat them, such as the child welfare case. We can do this, chiefs. I'm confident we can. I know we can. I saw what we can do together at the FSIN. I saw when we worked together collectively on the chiefs' mandates. We established the First Nations Health Ombudsperson Office. I saw what we did when we worked together and we took those positions in the past historically, what we achieved in gaming. When we exerted our sovereignty in gaming, and Chief Bernard Shepherd opened that casino in White Bear and the province shut it down. But I saw when we came together as chiefs and we united and we got the gaming framework agreement established that's generated over $1 billion of wealth for our people and created almost 2,000 jobs for Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in Saskatchewan. We can do it. Have we had some challenges? Yes, but we can do it. We can take action. I've talked about that 90-day action plan. I've talked about getting reports card on MMIW, meeting with the U.S. ambassador this year. Did you know what the U.S. government recognizes tribal sovereignty? They get it. They said, we're trying to negotiate right now water rights on the Columbia River. We're recognizing the tribe in Canada's rights over the river. It's the Canadian state that's not. He said, we've instituted our own MMIW. We're doing it at Home Department. All federal departments are working together. Homeland Security, Border Security, the FBI, and we're finding Indigenous women all over the country. He said, what's wrong with your own country? What's wrong with the RCMP? What's wrong with CSIS? CSIS will monitor our chiefs as soon as there's a mine getting ready to go up. How come they can't monitor the killers, whether they're police or not, wherever they are, when they kill our women and our children? Why can't they do that? Our people need more hope. They need better opportunities. And my heart goes out to the people in your recent provincial election in Manitoba. I want to acknowledge Premier Wab Kinew. It gave our children and our people hope that we can take control of the levers of government in this country. I want to acknowledge that, but acknowledge the pain and suffering to all the victims that have suffered at the hands of MMIW, mothers that have to go to bed not knowing where their daughter is. The murders that happened, the 4 deaths, Grand Chief Merrick recently, and the 2 of our women that were killed last week, they found the murderer. And murder is getting away, whether it's Tina Fontaine's murderer. This justice system doesn't work for us, chiefs. We've got to create and develop our own frameworks, our own justice systems, our own healthcare systems. And I believe that's where the role of the national chief comes in. No more pan-Indigenous work or legislation. Let's focus specifically on First Nations rights. And they want to talk about co-development. I'm not talking about their lawyers going in a room and dictating what goes into the legislation. If they're serious about co-development, then our chiefs and our lawyers get in that room with them and we draft the document with them. I got a minute left. So in closing, should I be elected your national chief tomorrow? Should you give me that great honor and responsibility tomorrow? The pledge I make to you is work just as hard as I have worked in Saskatchewan. Work just as hard as I have on the Chiefs Committee on Health at the AFN. Work just as hard on the, let me get this right, Northern Assembly of Remote Communities as the co-chair to work on the issues around child welfare. It's a sacred responsibility. Tomorrow morning, I ask for your vote, chiefs. I ask for your support. And when I'm national chief, we're going to shake this country up and let Canada and the provinces and territories know we're back. Hi, hi, Vigwaich, Mercy Cho, Panamia, Panamia.
Thank you, Candidate Pratt. Just give a minute to clear the stage. So our next candidate is candidate Belrose.
20 minutes. No, just kidding. I'm a Takipi. I'm Jamie Wolf, Chief of Muskowgan First Nation. At a young age, I've got the privilege to take part in the band election. 20 years old, I got elected for council. I have 14 years experience as a council member. 2 years, this past 2 years, elected chief, taking over the role of my predecessor. I've known Reginald Belrose my whole life. For somebody that I truly look up to from a cultural standpoint and giving him much respect. Everything that he does in his life begins with prayer, begins with ceremony. His whole term running underneath him as chief of Muskowgan First Nation, I've learned a lot. To put the people forward first, our youth, our elders, and come together as a collective. So I've been here numerous times, and I've always wanted to see what it was like to come and stand before the chiefs, which is a great honor. For all the women, for all the elders, for all the chiefs that stayed right to the bitter end. Tomorrow's going to be a day to where we should be uniting and not dividing our communities. I wish every single candidate the best of luck. As sitting in this room for long hours litigating and listening to the stories of fellow nations, of the hardships that they go through, everyone knows if you're a leader in your community, the struggles and trials that we have to go through. Still talking about things that 20 years ago on education, mental health, social development, that haven't been resolved because we can't unite. We have to be very meticulous on the wording, and we can't even come together as a collective. We need a leader that comes from the grassroots level, that has that education but also has that knowledge and wisdom, that is alcohol and drug free, because how are you going to heal a country if you're not healed yourself? The elders will tell you when you're coming into ceremony, there's those first 5 rocks that they bring in. They represent what you see, what you smell, what you taste, what you hear, and what you feel. And if you're altering those senses, bad things happen. Therefore, in our community, we have a lot of people, and I don't point them out. I just pray that hopefully one day they come to their senses, that if they're going to lead, then be at least healthy. I praise the women that are standing here in this room. You have a sixth sense, and that's the giving of life. You know, and if we're all to come together and acknowledge one another and share ideas and opportunities, then we wouldn't be fighting here at the AFN. So listening to all the candidates' speeches on where they're coming from, man, that sounds good. Sounds so good that I bet you in 4 years we're going to be still talking about the same thing, the same issues. I've spoken at the FSIN level, first elected as chief, and they had the leader of the NDP come in, and I asked, how come there's no language retention when it comes to First Nation schools? We get $8,000 on the reserve, but you're giving $16,000 off the reserve for our students that are attending those French immersion schools. So this is what I think the mandate should be. When you're making your mark tomorrow, is not to be BS'd and paint you a rosy picture. Somebody has to stand there and come from the grassroots level to know the trials and the tribulations of what's really going on in the communities. We need a leader that was a chief in the communities to have that deep understanding of where we're coming from as First Nation people. And not to give them that mandate and then find out 8 years down the road it's not fulfilled. That's why we keep having this turnover. I've sat here when they had the national chief. I was proud that we had a woman national chief. And I was cheering on for my candidate that's from Muskowgan First Nation. And I thought to myself when I heard all the chiefs arguing and telling to get rid of that woman, you know, there's policies and procedures. A true leader doesn't try to dig up dirt on other leaders to find their flaws, their faults. Why not enhance those policies and procedures? That should be the direction that we should be giving the mandate to our people that are running. And collaborating and working together for education, mental health and wellness, social development, just to name a few. Policing on First Nation. The First Nations, we all have the same problems, but it's just in a different language. So in closing, I heard a lady speak up here. She was speaking her native language, and I apologize for not knowing mine, but whatever she said was smexy as hell. So in that, tomorrow I'm asking that you would vote my brother, somebody that I call brother, Reginald Belrose, for AFN National Chief. So that matak yasin.
2 minutes, Jamie, 2 minutes, I kept saying. Greetings, Assembly, the chiefs, the elders that are here. What a great day. Reg Belrose, Muskowgan First Nation, I want to acknowledge the territory and territories and people and peoples and all of the protocols. I feel that it's a great time to stand up here, to share my vision, to share my ideas, and say that I'm from a family. We have 108 years as chiefs experience in this country. So I learned in my 17 years as chief, I wasn't the first and I won't be the last. So there is some families in this room that have hundreds of years of chiefs experience. I want to acknowledge you, and we keep on coming back. We keep coming here to learn and to listen. So I've been able to carry on this leadership legacy for my very humble family who continue to serve the poor people, continue to serve the neglected people. And I want to share a simple story that's very hurtful, very painful. When we acknowledge Kamloops, we acknowledge Cowessess, we acknowledge Muskowgan, we acknowledge all of these communities that are finding the unmarked graves. Muskowgan First Nation is in that boat as well. And our family, my grandfather had a brother who never came home from that school. So we'll be a family that's giving DNA. We'll be standing in line submitting whatever needs to so that we can bring closure for a grandfather that I don't even know, because he was here before I was born. So just because we mentioned the unmarked graves, it's not over. It's just the start, ladies and gentlemen and chiefs. It's just the start. We have to continue to heal, and all of these hundreds and hundreds of families that have loved ones who never come home, we're gonna need to work with them, including mine. So I acknowledge that. Why I'm running for AFN National Chief? It's unfinished business for me. It's not because of last election, it's because of our fight for treaty and inherent rights. Those of us, I see some of you, I seen you when I was young chiefs, that fight is till the day we die. We keep fighting for our rights right until the day we die. So that's why I'm coming back. I'm here to ask your chiefs, of Canada for your support tomorrow, for your vote, because as I was hearing today, this is not fun, this is not games. The work right here, right now, it's life and death. Life and death. That's what we're dealing with here today and tomorrow, and I'm asking you for your vote. Chiefs, we need you to come back to the Assembly. 180 chiefs determining the direction for all of Canada, it's not enough. We need 400, we need 500, we need 600. So chiefs, humbly, respectfully, do not send proxies. Come and join us. Come and sit. AFN is not about the national chief. It's not about the regional chief. It's not about the glitz, the glam, all the cameras. It's about you chiefs representing your communities, your people, and your families. Those families are crying, they're screaming right now. So I've learned when you talk about unity, it's very easy to say. It's very hard to achieve. This unity word, we're throwing it around like it's just, it's nothing. But what I'm asking for is a strong, united, collective advocacy. That's the power that the chiefs bring. Not anybody up here. It's you, the chiefs, bring the power. The chiefs of the country. Few key areas I want to speak on. In treaty and inherent rights, our creator-given laws. The creator-given laws is our foundation. So when the government threats come, which they continue to come, the threats can only be defended by what the Creator has given us. In order to achieve that, you need to look internal. Cycles need to be broken. How do you break a cycle? One person at a time. You're not going to break cycles by thousands of people. The Assembly of First Nations was created for this purpose. Values such as human rights, diversity, justice, and the sovereignty of each rights-holding nation representing your people. This includes fostering a safe space for women and Two-Spirit people by implementing the recommendations of Resolution 13. Strengthening the AFN must be done to ensure that the integrity of the organization from within is the strength of the country. Not across the road, that's not strength. This is strength in this room. A system, we need to create a system for the resolutions. This has to be tracked. We come in here, we wordsmith, we discuss this for hours and hours, and then we don't know what happens to the resolutions. We need to give progress and updates. Key area for us, a generation of wealth. National focus must be dedicated to building intergenerational wealth that utilizes our rightful claim to the lands, the resources, and waters. The expansion and creation of economic sovereignty for First Nation and self-determination will ensure a more prosperous future. We will leverage this to address the socio-economic disparities existing today, which is enforced by one thing, colonial policy. We have to get back to remembering that. Economic self-determination, environmental sovereignty, they go hand in hand. Jurisdiction, especially climate change. Climate change, we have the AFN National Climate Strategy. My goal as National Chief would be to implement each of the 7 recommendations. The work has been done. We don't need to come in. We don't need to reassess, review, restudy. We just got to come in and implement. There's something that's going across the country, free, prior, and informed consent. Chiefs, this is your land, your territories. If you say no, you need to find the right table to get to that, where your voice can be heard. The one area we always hear across the country is the PCs are coming, the PCs are coming. Run and hide, the PCs are coming. Presently, the Canadian landscape, First Nations are not a priority for funding or policy. It's my goal to work hard on your behalf to ensure that we are a priority. That the chiefs are seeking trust, diplomacy, and relationships in Ottawa. I'm confident in my ability to build bridges and open doors to the Crown, no matter what party's in office. I will collaborate coast to coast to find the best models to share with the rest of the country. Saskatchewan has gaming, BC has health, Atlantic Canada has fishing business. Everybody has a model. Ontario has fisheries, forestry. Why we don't need to reinvent the wheel? Provinces have been given a lot of control and powers through the transfers. So then when you say, well, how did this happen? 1988, Calgary Olympics, we paid the price. Now the provinces have jurisdiction over gaming. There's a bill in progress right now for us to regain our sovereignty and jurisdiction over gaming. One of the key areas, very key, is the underfunded program health, medical, transportation, and community level services. First Nations must take ownership over healing and wellness to achieve better outcomes for individuals, families, and nations. Right now, the problem is colonialism. They try to make us fit into their health model. Health and wellness, we need to control. Ongoing support and essential for delivering trauma-informed counseling amid addressing intergenerational trauma and the detrimental effects on families and communities. Every community is dealing with this, not some, not just them guys or this guy, everybody is. If the government is genuinely dedicated to reconciliation, a response to the calls to action 1824 is imperative, necessitating consistent and multi-year funding to facilitate the healing process in our communities. We need a national strategy to help support emergency management responses for unprecedented community emergencies. Northern and isolated communities, the challenges that you face. A southern funding model does not fit up north. A southern dollar is not the same as a northern dollar. Housing, water, infrastructure, education. As your national chief, I'm committed to directing my efforts towards closing the gap for all. I'm advocating for crucial funding. As an example, $135 billion was submitted. Our needs are too great to be ignored. Canada, stop ignoring our needs, right? Drinking water. The key legislation in front of us, Bill C-53. I stand with Ontario chiefs, their assertion to the treaty rights and the right to be included in these legislative discussions. That bill needs to be killed. Bill C-15 on DRIPA has been adopted. We need to move forward with a focus on the action plan. AFN needs to ensure that this is legally binding. Bill C-268, control over gaming. Bill C-92, child and family services. In closing, tomorrow I'm asking you for your support to be the next national chief of the AFN. This evening, we're having an event. We got some guy named Dogface showing up. I don't know who he is, but no. Thank you, chiefs. Vote Reg Belrose tomorrow.
Thank you, Candidate Belrose. So at this time, I've checked with each of the candidates. We're going to move forward with the question and answer period. We've got a little bit of time left in the evening for that, and I want to move quickly into that. So we will open the floor in a moment for questions and answers. Please come to microphone 1 or 2 on the floor here, or you may raise your hand on the Zoom platform and to speak from Zoom. If you're joining us by phone on Zoom, you would need to press *9. Please recall that it's only the chiefs and proxies that may pose questions at this time. Questions may be up to 2 minutes in length, and you'll be signaled when your time is done. The questioners can also see the timers that will be on the screens, and they'll come up in a moment. We will be finishing at 9, so I recognize again that there's not a huge amount of time for questions, and we will go in order from one direction to the next for the questions. Seeing the first person ready with a question, it was at microphone 2, and I'll take your question, and the first, we'll start with candidate Woodhouse on the far side, and on the next question, we'll start with candidate Belrose. Please.
A lot of our people are sleeping outside in the cold, without housing, without safe drinking water, in a rich country like Canada. The government has announced that it's going to limit the deficit growth by $20 billion a year, yet the need for housing budget 2024 is $39 billion that the government is committed to. What steps will you take to ensure that if the government has to deficit finance our needs, that they'll do so? And the second question is, where do you stand on this pan-Indigenous approach to our rights and our benefits?
So I'll leave it to the candidates to see whether they
and
can...
the inclusion of the Métis.
to answer both questions in one. You have 3 minutes each to answer the question. Candidate Woodhouse.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Miracle. That's you're right. A lot of our people are homeless, and I know that we've been working on a homeless strategy for some time. I know that we were in BC just a couple of months ago to finally try and bring some experts together to start working on that. And we have to make sure that we build more homes in our communities, as well as push for more First Nations housing within urban centers, but that are controlled by First Nations people and that are led by First Nations owning those structures, even if they're off reserve, making sure that we help our people. We have a massive homelessness population in this country, and it's deliberate. It's not because they want to be, it's because Canada has made them that way. They've put so many barriers to so many people. And then now they're talking about it now, now Canada's worried about housing. Well, we've had a housing crisis for generations, and we have to get on top of that. We have to push for new investments towards our people. I will do that by the first day that I am elected, to make sure that that's going to be one of my first priorities. You can read it in my platform and read it online, and I have a strategy for that. And it's my first 100 days, we're on that right away, because it's so important that our people have safe and affordable housing, because safe and affordable housing means everything. It means health and everything. When it comes to the pan-Indigenous approach, you're right. We have to always, I don't like the word Indigenous. We're not Indigenous anything. We're First Nations people. And I always truly believe that. And when it comes to the Métis issue, we need to make sure that there's a legal and a political strategy. Because if we're talking about Bill C-53, it will pass in Parliament. All these political parties said they will pass it. And so we have to come up with a strategy. It's going to be going to the Senate. What are we going to do about that? All of us together need to lobby the Senate very, very quickly, and in a political way and also a legal way, and we probably will be in court on that issue, because they're discriminating against each and every one of us again. When we have our babies, they ask us to talk about membership and ask us about all these questions, and they're not passing on our treaty. My grandfather signed this as his original treaty medal from 1871. And they're always trying to dictate to us about who our people are. We know who our people are. It doesn't matter 20 years from now or 20 generations from now. My grandchildren are my grandchildren. And so we do have to protect ourselves and focus on our rights. And if that means going to court, we have to do that. And if we have to protect ourselves. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Chief Miracle. And like I was saying earlier, we as a people are probably the most powerful people on Turtle Island as a collective. And I say collective, really loudly pronounced, because we have not used what we have as a power to compel the settlers on our lands to honor the agreements that we've made. We should not be living in squalor. We should not be living in poverty. We have to get united. We have to challenge. We have to sanction. We can, and we've had pressure in the past that's compelled these new governments to meet our unextinguished expectations and jurisdictions and sovereignties. There are some assumptions that are made by Canada. One of them is a fiduciary obligation that came about in 1867. Even that, in my mind, was illegal. You cannot unilaterally, as a new government, say, I'm going to look after the Indians and lands reserved for Indians. No. You have obligations that were pre-existing in treaties that need to be honored, and that means that we will enjoy the same quality of life, and we will not be living in squalor, not be living in poverty. We need to call them on that and get out of the way. If you're going to fail in your assumptions and in your assertions of fiduciary obligation, if you're not going to honor that, get out of the way. But we need to have a strategy. We, as the original peoples of these lands, need to meet and we need to support. And when we start to make these assertions, we should be independent, economically self-sustaining people as well. I support laws that are driven and developed and implemented by the original peoples on their territories, where we can derive our fair share of the resources under our law, under inherent law, not a delegated authority from Canada. So we can look after our people, but we're not going to let them off the hook for failure to honor the fiduciary obligation. We'll see them in their court, and if we don't see them in their court and we don't get a fair share of justice, we'll see them in our court. So we can and we will improve the quality of life for our people. We can't continually to look at the oppressor to fix something that they don't want to fix because they're still intent on getting rid of the Indian problem. And I won't support that. We need to take control of our own destiny. In regards to the pan-Indigenous rights, we're the people that actually entered into agreements to share. If you're not going to honor and you want to extinguish treaties, guess who the lands and resources fall back on? They're ours, and we'll reclaim. We have to reclaim our expectations around relationships with the newcomers to our lands. Did any of the other Indigenous organizations surrender or share their inherent obligations or rights? No, we're the ones that have deals. If you don't honor the deal, we'll take it back. We can look after the revenues generated from our lands and do a darn good job of it. I already spoke about the Métis issue. I believe Canada is delving into an area that they have no business, no jurisdiction. We retain those rights as the original peoples. Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief Miracle, for that question, and definitely housing is a big issue. I know that we've had this discussion about it, and I want to acknowledge the good work of the Chiefs Committee on Housing. You know, you've done a lot of great work there with the technicians around the table, and it's been identified what we need to close the housing and infrastructure gap, and that amounts $349.2 billion in terms to fix the housing, and that's those on the current waiting list, not those that are still living in the urban centers that are interested in coming home and want to live on our First Nations. So one of the things that I think we need to do, Chief, is implement a political strategy on implementing that housing strategy. The work's been done. Technically, now the political strategy comes in, and I believe it comes by relationship building with all the political parties, you know, whether it's the Conservative critic, Scott Aitchison, or whether it's the current housing minister. We got to build those relationships to make sure that we're getting support from them and holding them to their responsibility under the fiduciary obligation. I talked about this in my speech, where we look at every legal avenue and a legal strategy too, in terms of getting Canada to make those critical investments. We look at what's happening right now, and some of the discussions and talking with the chiefs is overcrowded housing has led to black mold within a number of our homes. Substandard living conditions has caused to a rise in COPD. We never had COPD prior to contact. COPD has been on the rise in our nations because of black mold and substandard housing. Yet we're having breathing issues and more of our kids getting asthma. In our First Nation in Muscopine, we have an entire family that has COPD, the mother and the children, and it's because of black mold in the house. So we need to look at potential as a part of this strategy, not just the political strategy takes place, not just letting Canada know what our expectations are, but also pushing and threatening with the litigation in terms of them failing to maintain their fiduciary. It really angers me when they announce all these municipal investments, nothing for First Nations. And that should be the priority of the AFN National Chief, working with our chiefs on getting that addressed. In regards to the pan-indigenization of legislation, I too oppose that. Bill C-53 is a prime example. The Chiefs of Ontario have taken that position where the federal government is taking giving someone else a right at our expense. That shouldn't be. I mean, you think they would have learned by now, after all of the issue and our histories with them, to take that approach. So we will oppose that legislation, Chief. We already have the mandate. We will hold government accountable to respect our lands and our resources and to honor the treaties. They have a fiduciary obligation to maintain the honor of the Crown, and we will hold them accountable to that, Chief. You have my commitment. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Chief Miracle. And yes, we're talking about dignity and honor of our people who are forced to live outside, who are forced to live in 3-bedroom homes with 17 people in some situations, and 3 generations living in one house. It's about unfinished treaty business. It's about the social determinants of health. This is about our people deserving the very best in our beautiful territories. We are among the richest of countries, and yet just outside these doors, our people are suffering. They're disillusioned. They don't feel part of our family because the governments have set it up that way. They don't feel included in our discussions because our governments have created this situation, this toxic environment that makes us live with the very, very basics of barely existing. And we have to stop that trend. And same goes with the legislations that come and trying to divide us even further, like Bill C-53. I don't think anyone would say that our relatives are not as valuable that are Métis, but that's not the issue. The treaty is treaty. The issues are treaty. We are sovereign nations. Canada only exists because of our treaties and our titles to the lands. They need to be reminded of that. They need to know that the social determinants of health, including housing, is a huge, huge problem. They seem to ignore it. We saw that the ignorance of it with that new housing strategy they announced. They didn't mention anything about the housing crisis in our communities, and we know that, we see that. How glaringly obvious is that their plan is not for us? They don't have best interests for us. They're trying to make sure that we don't get ahead. And I don't mean to say that disrespectfully, because I know that there are good relations here and there, but there are not enough of them. They're not treaty-based solutions. And I want to stand with you to look for these solutions, make sure that the government is fulfilling its obligations, but I also want to tap into the corporate and business world to do their part. They've made money off our people and our lands. They need to give back. And we have very smart people that can help us navigate how we can tap into the private sector, the business sector, to give back to our nations some of what they've already earned for their own people and their own families. Our people deserve better, and I want to thank you for standing up and posing that very important question. I want to find these common themes in the first 100 days as your next national chief, to find out what these issues are, and this is what I've been talking to about individually in caucuses. I want to get a clear picture of where we stand, the state of our First Nations, so we can say what the issues are. Is the money that they keep talking about enough? It will never be enough, but we need a clear picture to say what will be. Excellent.
Thank you, Chief, for those questions. With the homeless issue, I know that's across the country, and we need to look at it where it's not, all the dollars are going to the cities and the provinces. We need to change that around where it comes to our people on reserve, because that's a big issue and we need to deal with it. So I'd look at talking to the government and then switching that around so that instead of the cities and towns benefiting, it should come to us, because our people are in those cities, and unfortunately, it's the funding goes to the cities and towns. So we got to change that. So I'm committed to changing that issue and making it more the funding coming towards the bands, because we need to look at that, because help our members that are on the streets, because they're everywhere across the country. And even though the Prime Minister says they're doing this and doing that, that's not enough. We need to do more for our homeless people and making sure that they're okay, because if, you know, they like these towns and cities get the dollars for housing for homeless people, but it's not our homeless people, it's other homeless people. So we need to call the federal government on that and make sure that the dollars go for our homeless people and dealing with that way, because I know it's something that I'd be committed to doing. So as we move forward, to make sure that that issue is dealt with. And with the housing issue, I made comment on that. We need to look at a different strategy with CMHC so that we can have more dollars for our members' housing, so that in the future there should be a fund in place for CMHC so that that fund can grow and be able to provide more houses for our members down the road. Because if we're still stay stuck at where we're at, we're never going to move ahead. So I see that it's something we need to look at. And the pan-Indigenous approach, I'd still stick with the tree inherent right and make sure that we're always following that, because that's the way we've done things, and that's the way we should keep doing things, and enforce it to the governments and remind them that, you know, you're using our tree inherent rights, and if they want to take us to court on it, then we should. But even though our elders tell us we shouldn't, but it's something that needs to be discussed. And the last one, safe drinking water, that's an issue that's going to be on the table for years, because it's every region across the country has different agreements. Some are already on those water agreements, some aren't, and unfortunately, it's going to be looking at that draft legislation to address it and making sure that it covers all bases, because it's like the safe water claim that we're having right now. It's a two-way approach, because they're looking at it that the bands that have boiled water advisories, they're the ones that unfortunately are the ones that are getting reimbursed, are getting their claims in play. But it doesn't reward the bands that are working on making sure that doesn't happen. So there has to be a way to make that more fair, and I think we need to really look at that draft water legislation more carefully, because that's unfinished business.
We have to wrap it up there, Candidate McEnroe.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chief. It remains imperative that we assert our right to basic human rights, particularly in this area of housing. As your National Chief, I'm committed to directing my efforts toward closing the gap and advocating for the necessary funding amounting to $135 billion to address this critical issue. Pan-Canadian, I strongly oppose this approach. The melting pot, we don't stand with anybody. We're here, God-given, creator-given rights and laws that we have, and we have to continually focus on, we are the first peoples of this land. We are the first peoples of this land. We are the first peoples of this land. Continually reinforce that. Bill C-53, First Nations should not have to lose for others to gain. All those who will be potentially impacted need to be included in any legislative process or decision-making process. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to microphone number 1. You have 2 minutes for your question.
Nixo kwa ni stoa ko ka makinima o ke ni tito mātau kāna ni kai ko kusama po chispamuk ni na po taksi. My traditional name is Makinima, candidates, and I've been doing the work of leading my tribe for over 50 years. I was one of the founding chiefs of the Assembly of First Nations way back in the early 80s, and I worked with some great leaders. Unfortunately, most of them are gone. One of the objectives in the formation of the new Assembly of First Nations was to get away from the regime that existed where the law and the rules came from the top down. We decided we needed to really involve our chiefs and councils and giving that necessary direction to the regional leadership, to the national leadership. It worked for a while. Unfortunately, many of us think that we've gone back to that old regime, top down. When you are elected the national chief, how do you propose to begin that process, of really involving our chiefs and councils, seeking their direction in the work that is to be done at a national level? That's the first question. Second question is, we talk about, I hear, sovereignty a lot. Sovereignty a lot. Well, some of us think
You'll have to make it quick. I think we've only got time for that first question because
that's one of the times where the chairperson has interrupted me in my question.
I apologize, but we are
So let me finish my question, please. You wanted me to wear this in the first place. I can't. I used to do that at boarding school. That's why, with a number on it. That's why I don't do it anymore. Anyways.
That's fair enough, but I apologize.
Getting back to the question.
I really apologize. We're going to have to stop because we have 2 minutes for each.
To begin.
Sorry, we have to keep it equitable for everybody, and it's a 2-minute time limit for questions. I appreciate that we've got to keep it that way. So sorry, we'll take your first question. It's a good one for for candidate Reginald Belrose to begin with.
Thank you, Chief Fox. Your first question is an important one. Too bad we couldn't hear the second. So the question is, how do we get away from this top-down approach? How are chiefs with their councils recognized in this country? It's my belief, I was chief for 17 years, worked with a council, supported by the people, implementing a vision. And the challenge when you come here is people in this place think they know more about what it is to be a chief than the chiefs. And right now, there's only ones who've been chiefs know that exact feeling and that experience. So what I would propose is a session where we bring in the chiefs with councils, and I would like to see the AFN mandated by chief and council resolutions, where you come in and you say, this is what the Blood Tribe is looking for. This is what Muskowgan First Nation is looking for. This is what all of the First Nations are looking for. Because there, it's my opinion that chiefs and councils are the boss in this country. Not Parliament, not legislative, the legislation or the legislative building. Chiefs and councils are the boss in Canada. Thank you, Chief.
Chair, out of respect for Chief Fox, I'm going to give him my 2 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. I really appreciate that. My second question was, we talk about sovereignty a lot, but when you're elected, what are you going to do to really achieve true sovereignty for the First Nations people at the local level? Some of us believe that you can only achieve true sovereignty by having financial sovereignty. So how are you going to try and help each of the First Nations leadership throughout our territories to really begin to be engaged in business activities where they have own source revenue through profits and so on? Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. I'm just going to give candidate Belrose 30 seconds to answer that one quickly in fairness, and then we'll move to candidate McEnroe.
So I don't believe AFN should be an expert in sovereignty. I believe that belongs with the nations. To be sovereign, you need boundaries, you need people, you need history, and you need rights. That's that sovereignty model. Chief and council supported by your people, implementing sovereignty. That model can be created and best used examples and delivered by First Nations for each of us sitting in this room. I believe that AFN is a coordinator and a facilitator in these discussions. The sovereignty belongs with each of you. Thank you.
Please. Candidate Mackinac, I think you have a little bit more than a minute, so go for 2 minutes if you like.
Okay, thank you, Chief. With the relationship, you are right on a top-down approach that needs to be changed, where it's from the chiefs down to AFN and then the federal government. That's the way the original intent and purpose of, I agree with you, the AFN should change back to what was the original intent and purpose, and that's the way I'd look at it. Because if we can change that relationship, then things will get better, because then the power goes back to the chiefs. So that way, any discussion or decisions that are made by the federal government, we take the direction from the chiefs. So that's the way I'd look at it. And even going as far as looking at the doctrine of discovery, so that we can change the relationship, so that from beginning it'll be dealt with. So we need to do that. And under sovereignty, I guess it would be exercising our treaty inherent rights and working with the chiefs and councils, so that will always be there, and we'll always respect that and exercise that right, because we can't do that. We can't let the government tell us what to do. We need to exercise our treaty inherent rights. So that's what I enforce and support.
Thank you for your patience. Which in English translation is sweetgrass woman. So I acknowledge you and thank you for your 2 questions. And to me, I would like to explore the idea of signing treaties with each other as nations. I think our ancestors did it how many years ago? I think we need people like our treaty experts like Regina Crowchild and others, Saul Sanderson, others across our nations. We need to find a way to sign treaties with each other and stat before this gets worse. I think it's an idea that we need to think about and think through. It would be a long process, but it would be a worthwhile effort, because then it would start to align what AFN's mandate is again, but also it would align our priorities, and what would come out on top is what our common themes and what our common issues are and our common strengths. I think it's worth seeing what we can do if we sign treaties from all the way from BC, all the way to the East Coast, northern issues covered in there, isolated communities covered in there, as well as urban centers. Maybe perhaps we include, well, I definitely would include our urban people that are out here on our streets right now. How do we include them? How do we take our family back? I think that's a discussion, and as a national chief, I would commit to working on ideas like this that are not mine. They came to me somehow, and I want to be able to explore what's best for our people. I don't want to waste 3 years doing nothing. I want to accomplish the next 3 years. I want to walk away saying that we did this together, and I commit to that. I can understand how frustrated you as a longtime chief must be when you think back 30 years ago and how things haven't changed. I feel frustrated. But most of all, I think our people are frustrated. Our grassroots people are not inspired by this process. It's time to restructure the process. I think the AFN charter also needs to be brought into play here and see what is there, what is still good and what's relevant and what is not. We need a state of First Nations, and only we can guide that process. Yes, there are different Treaty 1s to 11, but there are other modern treaties now. But we need to come together as nations, as sovereign nations. I don't take that word lightly. I know my sovereignty is within my language, Dininimun, and I understand that because I understand the world differently. If there's a complex situation, I put the words into Cree so I can understand it better. So I believe that we have now the time and opportunity to create our treaties with each other as nations to nations.
Thank you, Chief, for those questions. And first of all, I think one of the, and my apologies of what happened, Chief. I don't believe that Chief's mics should ever be cut off. This is your assembly, and this is your organization, and this is your institution. I just first of all want to say that in regards to giving the chiefs a greater voice, I think we need to streamline the assemblies. You know, I know we have our order and the different things and the pomp and the pageantry that takes place, but what we will do, Chief, is we're going to streamline, have the grand entry on day one, have the land acknowledgement, the welcome from the elder, the prayer, the regional welcome from the chief or regional chief, the national chief, brief remarks, and get right into the business of the chiefs. Get right into the assembly business, get right into the resolutions, and do all of the chief's business day one, day two. Day three, the last day, we can save it for the minister's reports and save it for the honoring and the recognition, and end it with the gala that night. Secondly, Chief, what we've committed to is also to what we will do is ensure communication flows out the door. I'm very aware that emails have not been responded to over the course of this campaign. Chiefs emailed 2.5 years ago, still waiting for a response. That shouldn't be that way. This is your organization, Chiefs. There should be, when you email, when you text, when you call, there should be an answer, if not that same day, then the next morning. So number one, timely communications. Those are other things that need to be included. Strengthening the Chiefs committees. Making sure that the Chiefs committees are in the driver's seat, making sure the Chiefs committees are the ones that are controlling it, and bringing those mandates into the Assembly, because Chiefs know what the issues are on the ground. It's the Chiefs that have to be empowered in this organization. It was the Chiefs that got it established, it was the Chiefs that made all these breakthroughs, and it's the Chiefs that's going to fix it. So that's what we have to do. In terms of your second question, how do we support the nations on sovereignty? Well, the national chiefs should be supporting each and every one of our First Nations. And I'm talking about the modern treaties. It's treaties 1 to 11, Robinson Huron treaties, the peace and friendship treaties. Those areas of British Columbia that still are in negotiations are not in a treaty. We have to support all those areas, Chief. And as they're exerting their sovereignty and jurisdiction on their territories and lands, and I want to acknowledge the good work that's taking place in the Blood Tribe, everything that's taking place in terms of health and addictions, as well as economic development, Chief. We know you're working hard out there. The National Chief should be giving you that full support when you're meeting with government, opening those doors and sending the message to the ministers, hey, respect the Blood Tribe's issues, respect the Blood Tribe's mandates, respect the Blood Tribe's positions, and backing you up fully. And that's the pledge I make when I'm National Chief, and we will do that to support you, Chief, and not only you, all the other chiefs in Canada. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Chief Fox, Ogama, Niminagojing, I'm Chief Dean, and I appreciate your question. And if I would have known your involvement back when the charter was transitioning and the discussions that happened, I would have called you up, because when I first came on, and Chief Morris is here, and I seen Regional Chief Brendan Mitchell there, we were, on your behalf, asked to take a look at the charter and to renew the charter. And one of the first things I had asked our committee was, we got to talk to the architects. We got to find out what was the vision, where did we want to go, what did we want to see, how can we chart a course without looking at where we came from. So we did that, and I really appreciate your thoughts, even just a little of an insight today from you. Thank you for that. I would really like to see, based on that type of comment and other comments that we've heard, further develop the process of engagement with the chiefs from coast to coast to coast. And I hear the challenges that the chiefs are sharing with regards to the relevance of the AFN. We have not evolved, we've not modernized. There needs to be embedded, even maybe every 2 years, reviews of the charter. Like, we need to move, and we're stuck. And that's what I want to continue, is this process of renewal of the AFN. We've got work that happened way back in the day where we went across the country with other representatives that were doing similar types of work. We've put some of those wheels on that bus. There's more to do, and we need to do more in the next while. just incredible vision that's out there on where we want to go collectively, including sovereignty. And I appreciate, I think we've had a lot of the regions turn up the volume in regards to the expectations, and I'm sorry to hear that Alberta had left. But, we need to be attractive. We need to be inspired. We need to be motivated, and we can do that through doing the work at the Assembly collectively. Include everybody in the work that we do. We have representatives right across the country, and we want your input. We need to invest in what the AFN can be. We need to create that vehicle to be responsive, to be modern, to actually be what you expect it to be. And one of the things I'm hearing from you is that you want us to set the tables, open the doors, introduce the issues, and let you talk. I don't want to be your voice. You have your voice. You all have your voice based on your unique relationship that you've hemmed out with the people that are new to our lands. And that is such, my experiences in the last couple of months on the road listening to you, incredible. What a diverse, beautiful peoples across these lands. We need to capture that. We need to invoke that essence into how we evolve. And I'm going to be able to do that. I'll work on that because I'm action-based as a leader, and I will be out there. I'll be in Alberta, Southern Alberta, the Blood Tribe. I enjoyed my times there. I met with Billy and Josie Heavy Runner when I was a kid. We went and visited them, and they gave me a horse. They bought me cowboy boots in Browning, and they introduced me to the differences between the Blackfoot, the Blackfeet. They took me, all over the place. They told me about rope, how we had our old woods tent.
We're going to wrap it up here.
Put that rope around your tent so the rattlesnakes. Beautiful experience and memories of the blood. Miigwech for your questions.
Thank you. And thank you all for your wonderful words. Thank you, Chief, for your question, Miigwech. And I'm so honored to sit here, and I'm so glad that you're here. I know that one thing that we have to do is improve these assemblies in many ways. I know that every time that we're here, every time chiefs feel disrespected, elders feel disrespected when it's 3 minutes and they cut people off. It's not a long time, and we have to improve communications, and we have to make sure that we're respectful of people. They come here, they spend big money to come here to try and work, on behalf of their nations to try and get some work done. So we have a lot of work to do. We have to ensure that there's more time for discussions, and we have to make sure, as National Chief, that I'm there working for you, that I'm coming to your communities, that I'm coming across the country to talk to you and to tell you what's going on. And it's disheartening sometimes when some regions maybe, and we've seen this in recent years where you're right, there's some pieces that are not working, and we have to look at that. There's a charter, and we have to look at the pieces that do work and improve the ones that don't. And I know that there's experts. I know that there's people that have done this work back in 2004, 2005, 2006. Where is that report, and where did it go? And is it, is there pieces of that we can put forward now to make things better for all of us so that we don't have this all the time? I'm sorry to see you disrespected here again today, and I'm happy for my colleague for allowing you to speak and get in your second question when it comes to sovereignty. I always believe that First Nations, we're sovereign, right, from our own people, and it's for them to tell the National Chief what to do. The National Chief works for our First Nations people, not the other way around. You tell us what you need us to do. You tell us what doors you want us to kick down, and I'll be there to do that for you. And that's all I can commit to you. Miigwech.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. The next question will go to the Zoom call, and it's Chief Donald Sam. If we can unmute you.
I can't turn my video on, so the host has stopped it, but elders, knowledge holders, fellow chiefs, my name is Donald Sam, the chief of the Akiskana First Nation, in Makaskunacha. I have I wrote down my questions, so I'll be able to be brief in them. And I think I hear a bit of an echo. I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
So my first question I wanted to ask about how can the AFN support Indigenous communities with in particular, the ISC, the bureaucracies in Indian affairs, specifically Jordan's principle. We've gone 10 months, no payment, reneging on what agreed amounts would be paid. And so holding some accountability, bringing some accountability there. Sometimes there's a gap between, my second question here is that sometimes there's a gap between vision and what is being delivered. And so there were some questionable issues that were raised by the National Chief, Roseanne Archibald. Very concerning for me as a chief. I'm over in British Columbia and I don't get to see what's going on all the time. How do you repair the Assembly of First Nations own bureaucracy to ensure accountability, trust, and unity? And in my last 15 seconds, I really admire the words of building each other up. We are all leaders and we hold each other accountable. And so promoting that as in AFN would go a long ways. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Candidate Woodhouse, go ahead.
Thank you, Chief Sam, for that question. Yeah, how do we repair unity at the AFN? And absolutely, we have to, number one, we have to be respectful, each and every one of us. And we have to be professional when we're working with each other day to day. And if we have issues, make sure that we have strong HR, and that it covers all of us, even the executive and even the national chief, to make sure that it covers the staff and the entire organization, to make sure that everybody is respectful and kind day to day, and that it's okay to have differences as long as they're done in a respectful way, in a calm way. And so I think that I think also by focusing on the issues, there's so many issues in this country that our First Nations are wanting us to work on, just like getting results for our First Nations people when it comes to, child welfare, housing, all these things, justice, policing. They're waiting for us. And I think that as long as we keep focusing on the issues, we shouldn't have time to disagree. We shouldn't have time to pull each other apart. We shouldn't have time to, we should be focused on those issues. Our people are waiting. We have many people, like we had heard one of the chiefs just moments ago talk about homelessness. Those people are waiting for us to find solutions, to find space for them in this country when they're looking for apartments or looking for homes on their communities and they can't find them. Those are big issues when we're in a big country and our people are the poorest. And so we have to work together. When it comes to working together, it means we collaborate, we have open communication with each other, and we talk as much as we can. And I think that the first job, that the first day of the National Chief coming into office at the Assembly of First Nations does have to go and speak to the staff and does have to lay some groundwork on how things will move forward in a good way, in a positive way, to be working for each and every one of you chiefs. So miigwech.
Miigwech, Chief. I really believe strongly in establishing vision. And in order for the vision to come to fruition, we really need to develop and maintain relationships. And I learned that from elders a long time ago when we looked at how to develop successful programs in First Nations communities. And, as I think about the challenges with Jordan's principle, the challenges with a lot of the commitments, we've been somewhat absent in the last few years because of a lot of issues that have been happening with our own organizational structures. I think we need to have a vocal, kind, assertive national chief like myself that can help with making sure that the settler governments follow through on their commitments to us and do that in a way that can see the hopes and the expectations come to fruition. And I've been able to do that in my experiences in Ontario as a community chief, incredible cutting-edge achievements around jurisdiction, around follow-through on promises, such as the $10 billion Robinson-Huron Treaty annuity, which I was a lead negotiator on, and we made sure that the Crown, represented by the indivisibility of the provinces and the federal government, had to follow through on what they had promised us. And it happened. We were relentless. The team, having spokespersons, having scripts, having teams, we were organized, and having 21 First Nations a part of that whole process, leadership, funding, financing, litigation management, it all paid off in the end for our people. We need to be organized, and we can be organized, and things like Jordan's Principle can see the light of day as far as our expectations and hopes are in regards to that matter. And additionally, when I think about the vision, the issues that happen in our organizational structures, we need to actually work through all of those issues. We had to sign amongst ourselves a code, even here, to participate and be a part of the AFN based on some incredible work that has happened at the AFN in the last couple of years, in particular to the elders in guiding us through how we all need to enact and work with each other as leadership. So the AFN can be a safe place and will be a safe place for everybody. Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief Sam, for the question. And definitely, I know that Canada's backsliding at the moment when it comes to the delivery of Jordan's Principle, and I think all of us can, from what we've heard around the country, is denying a lot of services for our people when those applications are made. It's not just happening in Saskatchewan, but it's happening across the country. So we need to, number one, as the AFN National Chief, support the First Nations in terms of those applications, make sure that Canada is upholding its obligations under the tribunal directives. I know that the agreement in principle is taking place right now. The negotiations on compensation are done, and now we're working on the long-term reform of child welfare, which is the next piece of all of the child welfare work that's been done. So I think we need to ensure that, number one, that those services are provided. The minute that application goes in, Chief, from one of your members or your children or one of your people that need it, wherever they are, whether they're living on reserve or off reserve, I think the support needs to be there in terms of the approvals. Now, some of the regions have done very well in terms of the applications process. They've got the application, it's been out the door immediately, they haven't held anything back. Other regions, not so much. It's the same old song and dance from Indigenous Services Canada, where they're saying you got to cross every T and you got to dot every I in order for the approvals to come. Well, that shouldn't be the case. If the need is there for the child, if the need is there for the family, then what's the big holdup? Canada, you've already apologized and made a commitment to reconciliation. Well, then follow through on the commitments that you've made. Follow through on the directives from the tribunal. Follow through on the court orders from the federal court that you've been in how many times have you been in non-compliance? So I think that's where the National Chief Office needs to put the political pressure on and be very clear with Canada and their bureaucracy. You have to follow through. You have to make sure that these obligations that you've committed to in honoring the tribunal rulings and Jordan's Principle are followed through. So that's what the role is, Chief, and I believe that we can do that. And you know, I'm sorry that your people are dealing with the denials, and when you're submitting those receipts that they're not being honored and the payment isn't coming. But as National Chief, we will make sure Canada pays. We will make sure that Jordan's Principle is honored. That young fella didn't pass away for nothing. We're going to continue to fight and make sure none of our children are discriminated against no longer by the Canadian state. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you for the question, Chief Sam, and thank you for sticking it here with us, sticking it out with us, and all of you here in the room and all of you online. Thank you so much for your patience and staying with us on these important issues. Jordan's principle, unfortunately, came out of that racist attitudes governments provincially and federally have against our people. And it's not coincidental that one of the most racist provincial governments in our country has been Manitoba to our First Nations. Jordan's principle came out of that for that reason. They were playing political football of the life of a child, Jordan River Anderson. And I want to acknowledge a former councillor who was here earlier from Norway House, where Jordan River, where Jordan River was from. He was completely disrespected and his rights were trampled as a baby, as a new human to our nations. And this is what it's about. And you also talk about the disrespect that our former national chief as well faced in these processes. It's all a matter of bringing dignity back to our nations and making sure that federal and provincial governments understand who we are and what we stand up for and for our people. It's unfortunate that Jordan's principle had to come out of our province. And I'm glad that you're holding and others are holding governments to account and making sure that what they've at least promised is going to be lived up to. We have champions that are here with us that will continue to advocate for the rights of our children and the rights of our families, and I'm glad for that. I would make sure that AFN stands with our champions and find a process to not reinvent the wheel, but to stand with you as you assert that authority on right to access what you need for children that are the most vulnerable in our nations. And I want to make sure that AFN, as a national chief, is responsive and inclusive of our very youngest. I would never, ever wish anything upon anyone that has children in that situation. And it happened to our people. It happened to Jordan's family, and it happened to him. And we can't let his memory go in vain because of what happened. And we can't let just money be the driving force of this. This is about respect and honoring of our people. It's an ongoing issue, and as your next national chief, I will stand with you as you make these assertions as sovereign nations.
Yes, with Jordan's principle, that needs to be looked at, and we should get all the information on across Canada, which areas and what are the problems, because if we can get that together and call a meeting with the minister, with the federal government that's in charge of that, we should do that and bring it all to the table and make sure that they're held accountable for that, because you shouldn't be doing that to our children, especially under Jordan's principle, because that was there to help them, and it should be there to help them. So I'd support that and doing what we can do to make sure that the government is following through on Jordan's principle. And I'm committed to working on that so that the youth get the services that they need and no more of this double standard that our youth are facing under Jordan's principle. So that's what I'd bring to the table. And under accountability, I'd follow what's been done the last few years at AFN, follow through with the audit and making sure that the recommendations are followed and making sure that they're brought here to the table. And I know they've been doing that over the years, and making sure that the chiefs know how AFN stands and what needs to be addressed. So that's one of the commitments I'd make under accountability, because those audits are important and we need to follow on those recommendations from the auditors so that it makes AFN a better organization and more accountable to the chiefs and to our people across Canada. So yes, I agree with the audits and the accountability to follow that, making sure that they're followed. So thank you for that question.
Thank you for the question, Chief. What I believe is we need to focus on the nation to nation, elevate the funding from the department to the cabinet and then to Treasury Board, because right now the bureaucracy is a monster. So I recall when the department was split, they were supposed to work themselves out of a job. I'm sure many of you remember that. I don't see them working themselves out of a job. I see them securing themselves more work. not working themselves out of a job. So we have to remind them that as Jordan's principle, the reasons, the prevention dollars, there used to be so much jokes about this. Oh, the community needs something, go to prevention. Oh, there's a trip we need, go to prevention. That was the joke. Yet it's a serious issue that we're grappling with. And this young man, I was the chief when all of this was being challenged, fighting over who's going to care for the child. That's what the bottom line was. This is supposed to eliminate that fighting. Who's going to fund a care for a child? With the how to restore integrity to the AFN question, how do we repair the unity? Chiefs are not being supported. I know what chiefs go through when you're bashed on Facebook. You know, there's so much lateral violence against the chiefs in the country. And yet, when you stand there, who sticks up for the chiefs? I've asked leaders at FSIN, AFN, how come you don't defend the chiefs? But when you come for votes, oh, you're sure going to do this and that for us. But yet when we're getting kicked around, calling criminals and thieves and whatever those vicious words are about the leadership, I don't see anybody standing up for the chiefs. Someone's got to say, this is a tough job. These are incredible men and women. They're not criminals and they're not thieves. But I don't hear anybody saying that. But I will say that for you, chiefs. I will defend you. That's how you bring a united AFN, restore integrity. Chiefs need to be honored as the first leaders in this country. That unity piece. I mean, I've been bashed on Facebook myself for my whole political career. Not very easy, not very friendly. Every time a remuneration audit comes out, what happens? All over Facebook. Look at these guys. Look at these women. But what do you need? Chiefs are not paid properly. Councils are not funded properly. There needs to be a real-time solutions brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So noting it is 8:47, we're going to take another question from Mike 1. I recognize that there are a few other questions. Unfortunately, we are going to be over time after this question from Mike 1. But I will encourage anybody who wishes to stay around afterwards and speak with the candidates. There's obviously time tomorrow as well, but I'm sure that people will stay around and continue discussion. Question at Mike 1.
Yeah. Thank you. Terrence Nelson, Rose River Anishinaabe First Nation. AFN has to become more relevant, and definitely one of the things is that AFN has to respond to what the First Nations are going through. I heard a little bit about the gaming issue. Section 206 of the Criminal Code was instituted by Canada, and then they gave the provinces Section 207, the exemption to the Criminal Code. And so the provinces are operating under Section 207. I know SIGA has done a lot with that. They did end up, there's 3 court cases, or 2 court cases in Saskatchewan where the First Nations won. They were going into a 3rd one, and Saskatchewan said, oh, please, let's not go to court. We'll give you casinos. There's 7 casinos in Saskatchewan. I've talked with people like Muskeg Lake, and I find that they're moving ahead really well. And I think, you know, to me, in Rosa River, we're going to go with a Section 207. We're gonna beat the hell out of the federal government on this issue, on gaming. But we also, so we have a piece of land at Emerson, Manitoba, on the border. We're going to convert that to reserve status, and that's one of the big issues, is converting lands to reserve status. If you can't convert lands to reserve status, you're no good. We got 25,000 acres under our 3 settlements, And I know in Saskatchewan they have the veterans. And, you know, I think it's very, very important for us to deal with the issue of conversions. Like, how in the hell do you convert lands? It's our lands. Why the hell have we got the Department of Indian Affairs telling us, you know, if we can convert it or not? But I'm just letting you know that we are going to beat up on gaming. We're going to convert lands at the border. We're going to sell pharmaceuticals to the United States. We've got a lot of things going to happen. I'm not going to wait around for AFN, but I really thank you all of you candidates for standing up, because I was there before running for national chief. And to the chiefs on the Zoom, Cindy Woodhouse was my executive assistant at Southern Chiefs Organization when I was Grand Chief. So I know her. I really, you know, there's 6 of you. I can only choose one. So you know, you're all my friends. And I thank you for standing up. Thank you for being there. Miigwech.
Thank you. Not a question. Yeah? Okay. It looks like there's some answers to this question, to the comment question. So we'll start with candidate Belrose.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. I'll acknowledge you that way. The addition to reserve creation process is slow and it's painful. And a big part of that painful process is the third-party interest. It's usually at the subsurface level where some oil company or somebody put a lien or something on that. And so it's a difficult process. I encourage you to go on the sovereign right for casinos. I'm fortunate enough to represent the SIGA company as the chair. It does bring a much needed revenue and much needed jobs. And everybody in this room needs revenue and you need jobs. It's just how are you going to choose to work with your provincial partner? And in Saskatchewan, there was a choice to collaborate. It did bring 1.2 billion to the First Nations, and it has had a positive impact. But there are some choosing to go through a sovereign model and leave the province out. The challenge in that model is to how are you going to get the machines? Because that's really where the criminal code is granted the provinces that right over the machines. But there is ways around it because we have experts, we have smart people in the room, and it will bring you jobs and revenue. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Another way to deal with the gaming issue too is our chief, Willie Littlechild, always reminds us, you have a vacuum there in your custom laws, and I think gaming is one of those areas where we need to get custom laws in place and you know, get rid of that vacuum so that the provinces don't have jurisdiction, because you know, a lot of the bands already had their gaming in place way before the provinces started their gaming. So we need to support the bands that want to go in that direction. And if they, you know, have to do further court challenges, then they should, exercising their inherent and treaty rights, because that's their initiatives, and we should support them. And then I guess with additions to reserve, I agree that that's too long of a process, and it should be done faster. And we shouldn't have the province involved. It should be strictly the federal government and the bands, because, you know, the provinces owe us money, and especially with the bands not getting compensated for when we signed treaty, we were supposed to get other lands when the bands expanded. That never has happened, and you know, I'm hoping one of these soon, one of the bands will take the government to task on that, because that's a treaty right, and they need to follow up on that. We need to make sure that that happens, because our lands are getting smaller and we need more lands. And plus farmers and other groups are buying the lands around their areas, and we're getting less lands for our people. So we need to look at that seriously so that the lands are there for our people, and especially if the bands have money from their settlements, and then it should be provided to them so that they get that land, so that they can have that land in place for their members that live away and that need housing. So it's a lot of work, but it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson, for your comment/question. I don't know what the question, I'm just kidding. That's our Nelson. There's only one of a kind, Nelson. I love seeing you at places like this because it reminds me of our strong leaders from our territories, including Manitoba. You've done a lot for our nations, and as a former candidate as well, you raise the issues. And you're right about the gaming. It's important. It's an important aspect of our lives that we need to get control back. And you know, these gentlemen are better experts on that, and I don't pretend to be an expert, but I do know that this is also a matter of treaty and sovereignty. And I keep saying that because that's what was driven home to me by our knowledge keepers and our chiefs, longtime chiefs and leaders like yourself, that we need to get back to a place where provincial and federal governments come to the table with a different attitude that respects what we are saying and what we need for our nations. We see many successful and hopeful places in our relatives in the States who are taking care of their people in this way, and even in our country. And that has to be respected. That has to be governed by us. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to work with you if I'm your next national chief. And this is probably the last time I'll speak to you until opake. Kita magigits midona ko dinayek nina oma national chief was to. I ask you once again tonight, before you leave, to elect me as your national chief, online, on the ground. I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful to sit with you. I can sit for a long time. I can sit here all night if you want me to. Just kidding. No, I don't want to. I'm just kidding. But I'm thankful and I'm honored to be here with you, and I'm honored to say I have support from my home community and my own home chief and many from my home province and nations and many across these nations that we call home. It's a beautiful family, and I'm thankful for all of you.
Thank you for the question. Terrence, appreciate the question. You're no stranger to the Assembly or to taking strong positions that get the attention of Canada. In regards to your question on gaming, I know there's a current bill right now looking at amending the Criminal Code Section 207 right now that's making its way currently, I believe, through the Senate. I'm really happy that APTN was involved in terms of that work and that bill coming out of Saskatchewan with Member of Parliament Kevin Waugh. And pushing that forward to recognize our jurisdiction and sovereignty over gaming. So I recognize that. I know that as the nations move forward, whether it's in gaming, you know, I'm really glad you brought up trade too as well, not just along with gaming in terms of our sovereignty. I was really happy when the recent ruling came down for the Mohawks regarding tobacco. That was such an important ruling because long before the settlers arrived and planted their flags and everything else they put on our lands, we traded with one another. We had agreements with one another. We had treaties with one another. We had commerce that we did amongst our own selves. And those economies were there flourishing. And when they showed up, the economies continued around the fur trade. So we've always had it. And you know, that artificial border, the 49th parallel, and it's a little bit further south over here in the east. But you know, that free flow of goods should be allowed to continue. You know, and what you're doing, we can build upon that case for free trade. Why can't we have free trade? Why isn't there a special clause there within the NAFTA agreement that recognizes First Nations jurisdiction and sovereignty? That's one of the things that the National Chief should be focusing on and pushing for, is recognition of that trade. So that's a commitment I make to you, Terrence, is that we'll support your nation's drive for those international borders to be respected and our goods to flow across that border unimpeded. In regards to the additions to reserve policy, it is a big issue. I'm aware of it. That process is too complicated and takes too long. I was flagged on it in British Columbia because of climate change and other things. The nations are needing new pieces of land. Saskatchewan, I was really happy that Sigakin, First Nation Chief Scotty Shappy, his council, and Chief Radio Watch prior to that launched court action against Saskatchewan for not honoring the treaty land entitlement commitments. So I know that that's a big issue. So the ATR policy has to be fixed, and that's what we'll be doing as National Chief. We'll be pushing to make sure that those policies are amended, and it makes it easier for our member nations to purchase the land, but also for it to be turned to reserve status easier. A lot of work to do, Terrence, and I know we'll get it done. So Miigwech, thank you for the questions.
Miigwech, Kimon, thank you for your question, and it brought to mind some challenges with some jurisdictional wrestling that we've had in our neck of the woods. And years ago, my council and myself embarked on a trip to the States to find some financing to build a casino. And we found a lot of money that wanted to come. And I even had some discussions with some of the slot machine companies. Valley was interested. And we were ready to go. One of the things we found was that there was an expectation with guarantees from the province. There was expectations around the amount of money you had to have in your account to cover off jackpots and the construction, and all was well. Even how we were going to be able to guarantee through authorities with these investors. And they were ready to come. Bali was ready to come, and Ontario messaged Bali and said, if you do business with Botswana and you sell slot machines to Botswana, we're going to prohibit you from selling slot machines in Ontario. So they said, we can't help you, Chief. It was a real challenge. We looked at other international processes. What we recognized through the research of the application of our unextinguished right was that we had gaming in our history, and there was never any gaming surrender in any treaties. So we have the legal right under our own sovereignty, under our own inheritance, to be able to manage gaming outside of Canadian law. What we did in relation to application of our own law was a provincial park in our area. It was stolen, we were removed. We gave them so much notice, we're taking it back. Eventually we took it back. Of course, I got charged, we got charged. We went to their courts, and the judge said, Canada, Ontario, you illegally removed these guys. You don't have any good excuse, so return that land. And we're not going to have it returned under Crown title. It's under Indigenous, Anishinaabe Key title. We will not even enter into additions to reserves processes because of the compromise that would have to be made with underlying title. Similarly with the specific claims process, instead of going through a specific claims process, which we don't believe in, we assert and take back our lands, and we put the onus on Canada to make a specific claim to us. If you believe that's your land, you make a claim to us. In the meantime, it's ours. Full page ads in the Toronto Star, Sudbury Star, Ottawa Citizen, Sioux Star, Thunder Bay Chronicle, and we said, this is our land, our law, our jurisdiction. Anybody's interested, you need to have our permission if you want to do anything on our lands. We're not going to ask Canada to apply in their favor and as per their own, goodwill to honor us. So we can do it. If we can support each other, there's many opportunities to promote goodwill across these lands. And gaming is one of those that I believe we have inherent right. That's where I would be focused instead of settler legislation. Miigwech.
Thank you, Chief Nelson. And once a chief, always a chief. And thank you for the question on gaming. I want to say that I really lift up, of course, the FSIN and Chief Belrose, Chief Pratt, when it comes to this issue. They've really, they've really pushed this issue. And and all the Saskatchewan chiefs, I'm so proud of all of you, and I'm proud of you, Dean, for your strong stance on this issue as well, that we do have a treaty right and that people can't trample on them, as we have seen in the tobacco case. I was so happy for those 2 individuals that didn't have to go to jail because they used their treaty and said, we don't have borders. We've never had borders. We were here long before Canada was here. So I know that we have to convene chiefs and legal experts, and we need to develop a cutting-edge strategy to deal with many of these issues, including gaming, because there's always a pushback at us, and it's like they always want to keep us down. So I just wanted to say that I uplift each and every one of you. I guess just in closing, I'm going to take a moment and say, you know, my platform has been focused on First Nations children, and I know that I heard the question a little bit earlier on Jordan's principle. We have a lot of work to do. They're always going to try and come and clamp down, and it's sad when service delivery providers are calling our offices and saying, you know, we don't want to work with First Nations because we're not getting paid, and that's not from us. That's from the federal government again. So I just wanted to reiterate to Chief Sam that as your national chief, we'll be on that. We'll be on that strongly, and it's something that all of us is going to have to deal with by working together to make sure that our kids get the best that they need. And that's my agenda, is a children's agenda, to always focus on our kids. Why? Because when I seen us being maybe there was things happening in this assembly, when we focused on our kids, we were united. So with that, I just want to close us off in a good way, and thank you for listening to me today. Thank you for all of you, and for me being, I'm so humbled that I'm running in this election with each and every one of these wonderful candidates that are sitting beside me. Their voices are so strong, and everybody has been very respectful and very kind to each other, and I like to see that. I'm glad. And we all started off in a good way, and we've been kind to each other. So miigwech, and thank you to our moderator. Thank you to Ron. Miigwech. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right. So thank you to all the candidates for participating today. We heard some incredible words. Before you leave the stage, I just need to hold you on here for just a moment. But indeed, we heard a number of incredible words from the candidates today. I want to thank them. I want to thank each of you in the room and on Zoom for participating, the chiefs and proxies, those in assembly that attended, for your questions. I know that we're at the end of the night. We have another long day ahead of us tomorrow. So I want to remind you that tomorrow morning, the chiefs and proxies will receive an email to access the vote at 9 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow morning. I see a couple of people. I recognize that there are people waiting to ask questions, but we did say that we would end at 9, and I did mention that the last question was the last question. So I apologize. There is time, again, as I mentioned, to speak on the floor. I'm sure the candidates will stick around for some time. But I also want to note very quickly that there is a request for the candidates to please exit on this side of the stage, as the AFN would like to provide a small gift for your participation. So thank you again, everybody, and have a good night.
What are the